Is there an artist more open, more willing to put himself out there than Kevin Smith? He literally spatters himself on screen.
For any other answer, hit me on the internet.
In his uncomfortably candid books and on his wildly entertaining podcasts, SModcasts, in which he proudly flies the flag for fanboy and girl culture.
Welcome to Fat Man on Batman. I'm Kevin Smith.
Kevin, you may remember, is the guy who trampled the notion that you need big budgets and big stars to make a big movie.
You know who I can do without? I can do without the people in the video store.
Which ones?
All of them.
After the success of Clerks, Kevin went for it. Controversial films like Red State and Dogma set off protests. Also starred Kevin's buddies Matt Damon and the upcoming Batman Ben Affleck. Speaking of which, Kevin went back behind the counter on AMC's reality series called Comic Book Men. Then with Cop Out, over which he had a much publicized fallout with Bruce Willis, he flirted with the idea of being a director for hire, and now Kevin, back and calling all the shots for an upcoming film called Tusk, which he calls a Canadian horror. Also the second season of the show Spoilers, in which Kevin and friends don't just review films, but revere them.
We're going to do that right here in the Spoilers in the Jay and Silent Bobatorium here at SModcast Studios.
Please welcome back to the show, Kevin Smith. Right now, everybody. Nice to see you. Pleasure. Have a seat. Welcome back. Hello. Can we just, let's zoom in on this. I love this. You got the Public Enemy button right there.
That goes back to my childhood, man, when I was like 87 or 88. I'm going out with Kim Loughran. And Kim Loughran is a huge Amy Grant fan in those days. I had a Christian girlfriend, so I was never getting laid. She loved Amy Grant, and I went to an album store, at a record store. We bought records in those days. I was looking for a cassette of Amy Grant, and instead I saw the Public Enemy cassette. And I was just like, oh man, I've heard this is really good. And mind you, this is pre-internet, so like you would hear from friends, like you should hear this music. You couldn't just sample it for yourself. So I had a decision to make. Do I buy the Christian album for my girlfriend, or do I buy Public Enemy for me? And it set the tone for the rest of my life, because I was like, Public Enemy, you know?
Attaboy. The podcast game has completely opened up your world, hasn't it?
This is my belief. In this life, we all want three things. We need three things: food, and to be heard.
Right.
And you could manage the first two pretty well, right? You could even pay for the first two in most cases. But to be heard is a lot tougher. In the age of social media, it's a lot easier to get out there and speak your mind. Like when I grew up, you'd watch other people speak their minds and be like, boy, I wish I could say something. You didn't have a platform. Now you could sit there on a podcast, do 2 hours about whatever you want to talk about. One of the podcasts I do 5 a week, so it's kind of like a daily job for me. One of them I do is simply called Fat Man on Batman, and that's just me talking about how much I love Batman.
So speaking of Fat Man and Affleck,
Yes.
what do you think?
I don't know. What are you talking about? Of course, I know. Affleck was cast as Batman in the Man of Steel sequel, and the internet was like, what? And I think I read an article that said 80% of the comments in the first hour were negative, 12% were indifferent, and the rest were Kevin Smith. Because I was just sitting there going, this is amazing! I trained Batman! You know, like, because I'd worked with him when he was younger, so it was kind of a delight for me. At the same time, it's like a character I've always loved, so watching a friend of mine get to play that character is just kind of cool. Even though I have nothing to do with it, somehow I win. And I thought about Ben often over the last few years, particularly because like I went through that thing with Southwest where there was like a 1 week period where the whole world was calling me fat on the internet. And I'd open myself up for it because I was tweeting like, yeah, I'm fat, but I'm not too fat to be on this plane. But the moment you say fat, everyone else is like, he said it, so let's call him fat. And so I remember that 1 week, prior to that, I'd often said, like, there were times where after Jersey Girl and Gigli, like, people were kicking Affleck, and, like, he was the butt of a lot of jokes and stuff. And I remember going, like, how does somebody live with that every day? And then I got to feel what it was like for that 1 week with the Southwest thing, and it was horrible. It was horrible. Like, you think about, in this business, you always want people to be writing about you because that means you're relevant. But when people are writing about that thing about you that is the most painful, like that was the chink in my armor. That was the thing that my Achilles heel. Like if they find out I'm fat, I'm ruined. And meanwhile, like everybody knew, but in my head, they didn't know because when Fame kicked off or when Clerks got picked up and people were like, hey, you're that guy, you stop being like, you're that fat guy. They go, hey, big guy. Hey, you're the big guy. Hey, big guy. And so big guy is not bad at all. You go, I am a big guy. But then when big guy, what that really means is a very polite way of saying, hey, you're a fat guy. So when that happened, when people were going, you're fat, it was tough to take. It was really, that was like my weakness. And I was like, oh, they all know. And after a week, I felt like this is what Ben felt like through all that time, where people were kicking him about Gilly and even Jersey Girl and stuff.
Did he tweet about you saying, no, he's just big boned? Did
Never
he
once. Never jumped to my defense.
Yeah.
If anything, he might have sent me an email going, now it's your turn. But he didn't do that at all. So it was weird to go through it. And then at the end of the week, what's his name? The golfer, Tiger Woods. Yeah. He came out and he was like, I cheated on my wife. And everybody forgot I was fat again. It was awesome. They were like, he's a cheater. I was like, yeah, look at the cheater guy.
Stick around, more with Kevin right after this. That's amazing.
All right, coming up, Kevin and the Fonz and the connection there. Exactamundo.
Everyone keeps telling us, they're like, well, when are you moving out to Hollywood? And I lived in LA, man. There's not much that could drive me back there. Cause I mean, I'll go out there for a week and stuff. We'll go there, we'll take the money and we'll go back to New Jersey and make our movies. I don't do lunch.
Yeah. I do lunch, but
he does lunch.
Not in Los Angeles.
Yeah, that's the Mosier, right? That's on the arts interview back in the day.
That is Scott Mosier, and I love seeing young Scott Mosier. I hate seeing young me, because I'm like, look at this dick. Like, if you look at that clip, I'm dripping with attitude. Like, I'm like, let Mosier talk. I'll just jump in when I need to. And I jump in and go like, I like eating. Like, I think I'm Fonzie or something. It's so irritating. When I watch footage of old me, I'm always like, grow up. And I did eventually. That's the good news. You eventually do grow up.
The current state of criticism today in conversation exists in the comments world. Yes. Most of it's anonymous, unless it's Facebook, but then it's just like bang, 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 bang. And there's no discussion. It's just comments.
But isn't that the way it should be? Like, everyone should be able to weigh in on a movie exactly how they feel. And, you know, some people have been like, but you went against critics and stuff. I didn't go against critics. I just said, look, pay to see the movie, then say what you want. It felt weird to me that I had to give up a movie free to somebody just to have them crap on it and stuff. Like, if I want that, I'll show it to my mother. Like, I don't need to. So I was like, all right, well, what do you want to do differently? And I was like, well, I'm in the position where I could be like, let's put together a show and show them what it could be instead. And that's kind of what Spoilers is. It's me kind of going, rather than bitching or vetching, it's me going, this is what I would rather do. And that's what you should do in life, not complain and say, these people shouldn't be doing that, these people shouldn't be doing this. Just do what you want to do and live as the example and be that change for people. That's like this podcast, SModcast I do. We did an episode, this was 6 months ago, episode 259 of SModcast. And this is just me and my friend Scott Mosier sitting around talking to each other. No different than what everyone does when they go out to eat with friends or go out to drink. It's just sitting around and BSing. We start telling the story of this thing we found on the internet, the little meme, a little story that came out of the UK, where there was this guy who was like, I will let you live in my house free of charge as long as you dress like a walrus once a day. I've been making a walrus suit, looks very realistic. I want you in the suit, never use your human voice, only use walrus sounds. I'll throw you fish and crabs once a day, and you get to live here for free. So I love the story. I was like, this is nuts. Turned out to be a hoax, but I was like, this is crazy. So we spent the whole episode talking about this weird story, and then we started building this fake horror movie. Me and my friend Scott, I was like, this is not, I said, this is a horror movie, dude. You show up to this guy's house to get in the walrus suit, he's gonna sew you in for life. You are a walrus. And we start making up that movie, and you can hear it. If you listen to SModcast 259, you can hear a story, you can hear a movie being born. And that was less than 6 months ago. We just announced yesterday that A24, a distribution company in the States, bought the movie. We went out and shot the movie in North Carolina. It's a Canadian horror movie.
Yeah, it's shot in the States, but it's set in Manitoba.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
I know. Usually people come up here and they're like, we're shooting in Toronto, but it's supposed to be New York, and I did the reverse.
Why?
I don't know. That just seemed like a very me thing to do. You know, shoot North Carolina for Canada. Actually, it was a cost decision. It wasn't even my call.
Like, how long did it take you to write that script?
It was like 20 days. Because what I did, and this is how I did it, man, it is all Canada. This is where it came from. I said, I didn't want to make movies anymore, right? I was loving podcasts, and I said, but if I was going to go back to a set, what would bring you back to a movie set? What would you like to do on a movie? So I was like, I like Canada. Like, I've been writing about Canada because I've been doing this Hit Somebody miniseries. It was a movie, then 2 movies, now it's a miniseries. So I have all this Canadiana, like, in my head. And I didn't use all of it for the hockey miniseries. So I was like, I know a lot of stuff about Canada that I can weave into this movie, Tusk. And instead of being in England, it could be set in Canada and stuff like that. So I set out to make a Canadian horror movie. And I as an American, and I was so tickled with the results, man, because it is steeped in Canadiana. Movie begins with a border crossing, and set in Manitoba. So Canada kind of led the way for me, because I was like, what would bring me back? And I was like, if I could watch Michael Parks tell stories about the Halifax explosion and stuff like that, I would totally see that movie. I would totally make that movie, and that's what it was.
All right, anthropology time. All right, so who's your least favorite hockey player of all time?
Wow, nobody ever asks that. I mean, I don't even know how to do that. Like, how do you rank the person that you like the least?
I start with a Philadelphia Flyer or a Boston Bruin. That's how I
just
start.
go to a team?
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's tough to say. Like, honestly, I've always had the utmost respect for anyone who could play the game. It's, to me, a metaphor for life. Like, you know, a lot of people in the States, baseball is their metaphor somehow, but for me, it's always been hockey. We're all goal-oriented. We all face offense and defense. We're always trying to reach our goal and stuff. And there's usually cats or something in the way. So it's a beautiful metaphor, and I've always had nothing but respect for anybody who can play the game professionally. I honestly cannot think of a single player that I'm like, I hate that person.
And there's two other parts to it, too, which is, number one, in most sports, you can just step out of bounds and remove yourself from the play.
You never leave hockey.
You never leave hockey. Like, you can never actually leave your life. And also, as much as we are about getting a goal, in hockey, an assist is worth the same amount of points as a goal.
See,
and I love that.
Smart.
I love that,
That's beautiful. I'm going to steal those two and add it to my hockey
You should do that.
That was good.
I wish we could talk for hours and hours, but make sure you check out his show called Spoiler. Season 2 is Friday nights on the Comedy Network, and it's a really cool conversation about film with a lot of different voices. What a pleasure, Kevin. Thank you so much, sir.
Pleasure always.
Kevin Smith. We'll be right back.